So we are going to study, it'll take us a long time, longer, I think, than even the Minor Prophets, which took us a few months. We're going to study the history section of the Bible, which starts with Joshua and ends with Esther, maybe.
With Chronicles?
Yeah, no, I think Esther is officially part of the history section.
Really?
Right? Somewhere in there. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with Joshua, and that's the beginning of the history. So I've said this before, the Bible isn't technically chronological. It wasn't meant to be chronological, but yet a lot of the Old Testament a lot of the Hebrew Bible is chronological. The Torah or Pentateuch or whatever, the first 5 books are basically chronological. And then it goes into the next thing that happened, which is the history books. Where it gets a little caught up is some of the later books, like Psalms goes over a long period of time, and others go, but for the most part, the books of the Old Testament are chronological, but it's better to think of them as sections. The Torah or Pentateuch it's the book of law, right? So are there historical sort of things about the people there? Sure, the Exodus and stuff. But it's not really meant to be a historical narrative, where the next section, starting with Joshua, is. So Joshua begins right where Deuteronomy ends, with so Moses dies before he enters the promised land. And then in Joshua, the chosen people enter the promised land. It sort of tells a story of how that works. The promised land that was promised them by God, but yet it already had people living there for generations. So it's like it's a.
But they came from there in the beginning, didn't they?
Well, we think
generations ago.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what you believe, I guess. In the if we follow Genesis, if we go back to the creation story, that's actually further east, right? But there's, yeah, it's interesting. The whole story of the Exodus and beyond is just an interesting story if you think about it. It took them 40 years to wander around an area that they didn't go in a straight line. There's no way they could have gone in a straight line if it took them 40 years.
Well, they had a few lessons to learn in between.
They did. Yeah. They did. So, and I'm trying to figure out when. Of course, the history books are old. I don't know if there is a timeline. A lot of these get so old they don't even bother with the timeline. 3,000, 4,000 years before Christ. Long time. As long as that. I'm just throwing out a number. I have no idea actually. So Joshua 1:1. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, "My servant Moses is dead. Now proceed to cross the Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the Israelites. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you, as I promised to Moses. The wilderness and the Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites, to the great sea in the west shall be your territory. No one shall be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not fail you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall put this people in possession of the land that I swore to their ancestors to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to act in accordance with all the law that my servant Moses commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, so you may be successful wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth. You shall meditate on it day and night, so you may be careful to act in accordance with all that is written in it. For then you shall make your way prosperous, and then you shall be successful. I hereby command you to be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for Lord your God is with you wherever you go. When I read something, there's usually at least one phrase that catches my attention. The area that they're talking about, all the way to the river Euphrates, is way bigger than what Israel is now.
Mhm.
And if they're crossing the Jordan, they're already in that area because the river Euphrates would be behind them if they're crossing the Jordan River. So that's an interesting thought to me. Wait a second, the Euphrates is in modern day Iraq, which is pretty far east, I think.
The Tigris and the Euphrates both
Yeah,
are in Iraq.
so they're crossing the Jordan River, but the Euphrates is behind them. So they're crossing into the promised land, but yet the land that they've been promised includes all the way to the river Euphrates. I don't know about the north and the south, but that's just interesting to me. Because Israel right now is basically framed by the Jordan River, right? On this side of the Jordan River. And they're crossing the Jordan River historically here. But yet it says, oh, your land also would include all the way to, which is a long way to the east. Just interesting thought.
I've never really studied a map. I've never been good in geography. And so I can't really picture this, and where the Euphrates is and where the Jordan is.
I have maps in my Bible, but I don't know if there's one that shows the Tigris and Euphrates, but I'll see if I can find it.
That is something I could do on my own if I took the time.
You
I just gotta take the time.
okay, here. There we go. I have to mark that so I don't lose where I am in the story. So
Okay.
over here is Israel. The Euphrates River is way over here.
Oh,
You can see it on there.
okay.
Mhm.
It's right.
In other words, they would have had to come all the way
This
up,
word is the Euphrates.
down
Hmm.
to have the Euphrates at their back.
Yeah, well, they're crossing the Jordan. It's all backwards. I have to think backwards. They're crossing the Jordan, which is here, but the Euphrates is way over here.
Right. So they would have had to come down, go up and then come down if the Euphrates is at their back, right?
Well, they're not. We assume their wandering was sort of south of there, from between Egypt and
Yeah,
in the Sinai Peninsula, between Egypt and Israel, but that their land would go all the way across to the Euphrates. I just never noticed that before. That's a long way.
Yes, it is.
Mhm. Mhm.
Granted, it's mostly desert, mostly very, very harsh desert. But hey, the way you can have all that land too is what God is saying. Anyway, I'll continue. Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, pass through the camp and command the people. Prepare your provisions, for in 3 days you are to cross over the Jordan to go in and take possession of the land that the Lord your God gives you to possess. To the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the word that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded you, saying, the Lord your God is providing you a place of rest and will give you this land. Your wives, your little ones, and your livestock shall remain in the land that Moses gave you beyond the Jordan. But all the warriors among you shall cross over armed before your kindred and shall help them, until the Lord gives rest to your kindred as well as to you. And they too take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving them. Then you shall return to your own land and take possession of it, the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you beyond the Jordan to the east. They answered Joshua, all that you have commanded us, we will do, and wherever you send us, we will go. Just as we obeyed Moses in all things, we obey you. So we obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. Whoever rebels against your orders and disobeys your words, whatever you command, shall be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. So what it's talking about is there are 3 tribes. Remember, there's 12 tribes of Israel, right? 3 tribes actually settled on the other side of the Jordan. So the promised land is actually on the west side of the Jordan. But 3 tribes, the tribes of Judah, Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh, all settle on the desert side of the Jordan. So it sort of says, hey, you guys are going to make your home over here, but help us get in, help us fight for the other side of the Jordan first. So.
So those 3 tribes were closer to the desert area that they had been given?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, going back to another map, I think one of my maps has the actual tribes and roughly where they're, yeah, here, okay.
Yeah. Here we
So,
go. Mhm.
so this map, oh, it's always bad. So where my finger is here, that's Reuben, Gad, Manasseh's on both sides, Asher's up here, Naphtali, Zebulun, Issachar, Ephraim, Dan, Benjamin, Judah, Simeon.
Right.
That's the 12 tribes.
So where's the Jordan?
Right down the middle, right here.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Well, yeah, let's see. And the yeah,
And the Tigris or the Euphrates?
way over here.
Yeah, way off where we can't see it. Okay.
Not even close. Yeah. So that's the 12 tribes. And roughly where, so it's sort of saying to some of the tribe of Manasseh and the tribe of Gad and Reuben, you're already in your land, but hey, help us fight for the land that's across the Jordan. So
Is the Salt Sea, is that the Dead Sea? Because on my map, it has the Salt Sea in between Reuben on the right and Judah on the left.
yeah, it's the same as the Dead Sea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And the little lake above is the Sea of Galilee.
Right. Okay, and they call it the Sea of Camareth or something.
Mareth, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Probably at that time it was called that, and then now it's called later on by the time of Jesus, it's called. I think it had another name too, Gennesaret.
Mhm.
So the Sea of Galilee. Then Joshua, son of Nun, sent 2 men secretly from Shittim as spies, saying, go view the land, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab, and spent some time there. The king of Jericho was told, some Israelites have come here tonight to search out the land. Then the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab, bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, for they have come only to search out the whole land. But the woman took the 2 men and hid them. Then she said, true, the men came to me, but I did not know where they came from. And when it was time to close the gate at dark, the men went out. Where the men went, I do not know. Pursue them quickly, for you can overtake them. She had, however, brought them up to the roof and hidden them with the stalks of flax that she had laid out on the roof. So the men pursued them on the way to the Jordan as far as the fords. As soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before they went to sleep, she came up to them on the roof and said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that dread of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no courage left in any of us because of you. The Lord your God is indeed God in heaven above and on earth below. Now then, since I have dealt kindly with you, swear to me by the Lord that you in turn will deal kindly with my family. Give me a sign of good faith that you will spare my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and they will deliver our lives from death. The men said to her, our life for yours, if you do not tell this business of ours, and we will deal kindly and faithfully with you when the Lord gives us the land. Then she let them down by a rope through the window, for her house was on the outer side of the city wall, and she resided within the wall itself. She said to them, go toward the hill country so that the pursuers may not come upon you. Hide yourselves for 3 days until the pursuers have returned, then afterward you may go on your way. The men said to her, we will be released from this oath that you have made us swear to you, if we invade the land and you do not tie this crimson cord in the window through which you let us down. You do not gather into your house your father and mother, your brothers and all your family. If any of you go out of the doors of your house into the street, they shall be responsible for their own death, and we shall be innocent. But if a hand is laid upon any who are with you in the house, we shall bear the responsibility for their death. But if you tell this business of ours, then we shall be released from this oath that you made us swear to you. She said, according to your words, so be it. She sent them away, and they departed. Then she tied the crimson cord in the window. They departed and went into the hill country and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers returned. The pursuers had searched all along the way and found nothing. Then the 2 men came down again from the hill country. They crossed over, came to Joshua, son of Nun, and told him all that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, truly the Lord has given all the land into our hands. Moreover, all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before us. The first ally of the people in the land was a prostitute.
Well, of course, there's a discussion too over the use of the word prostitute, because if she were just simply an innkeeper, she was automatically branded a prostitute, whether or not she actually sold herself for sexual favors. So
Yeah,
I've seen both. I've read both versions.
Yeah, I don't know.
Huh.
Sometimes translations are funny, but
Mhm.
so this is the description of the Bible. Rahab is a legal, independent woman with her own house. The nature of business means that the presence of strangers would not be questioned. She also, she may be a prostitute, but she also has other businesses. She processes flax, as it said. She probably has 3 or 4 other businesses. Whether or not she actually sells herself for sex is kind of hard to say for sure, because the choice of saying prostitute is a translation choice. But like you said, it could be like an inn, like what we would think of as like a bed and breakfast kind of a thing. It could be something as simple as that, but we don't know.
If women were not really well thought of and she ran an inn, they'd probably just assume that she was a prostitute, you know?
But it could actually be that she's a prostitute too. We don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't.
Always looking on the bad side. Gee.
Well, the realistic side, I would say.
Well,
But
there
yeah,
are prostitutes in the Bible then.
there are, well, one of the funniest things is people assume that Mary Magdalene is a prostitute. There's never a word about it at all.
No,
Mhm.
Isn't that funny?
It's,
you know, she would have had to have some other things going on, because if she brought her all of her family in, that would have raised red flags to them that something was going on, you know, the officials.
Mhm.
So she must have had something that had people coming in and out all the time, or that would have really raised
yeah,
an alarm.
I'm sure there was a lot of gossiping back at that time, just like today.
for
Yeah.
sure. For sure. Yeah, and there's nothing about, so sometimes when like Jesus stays with people or Paul stays with people, it sounds like they're sort of converted. You know, we've heard the stories about your God, and so now we believe that your God is the one true God, and so on and so forth, right? There's no indication of that. It sounds like the conversion is more that she's heard the stories of the chosen people sort of conquering people along the way, and they're afraid.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason.
What were the people that they conquered that they would have heard about at that time?
There were other nomadic people between Egypt in sort of the Sinai Peninsula area, and I think that's it. I don't remember.
Yeah, I have a map that said on the east side of the Dead Sea, when they go up to there, that we had, let's see, we had Edom and Moab
Yep.
and Ammon,
Yeah. And
all on the east side.
actually, let me say here.
And they went through all of those then before they started to try to cross on the north side of the Dead Sea to the east side of Jericho.
Yeah, the Amorites.
That was amazing to me.
10. Yeah, kingdoms of Sihon and Og east of the Jordan, southeast of the Jordan,
Uh-huh.
had been conquered under Moses' leadership in Numbers 21 and Deuteronomy 1 and 2. Yeah. So not that just not that long ago, apparently, in the history of them traveling, right? Deuteronomy is sort of the last little bit of their wandering. Also, she's pretty smart. You know, we talk about this. I try to highlight this a lot, regardless of what she does for a living. Finding women who seem to be independently in charge of their own household is kind of rare in the Bible. And so it sounds like she's the one in charge. And that's unusual. If she had a husband, her husband died, it wouldn't fall to her. It would her possessions would fall to somebody else, unless she had. There are certain very rare and unusual circumstances that could let it fall to her. We have a few other examples, but it sounds like she's the one in charge of her household, which is actually kind of a big deal. We'll hear of others kind of like that. I have an interesting note that I don't remember about Rahab somehow being among the ancestors of Jesus.
Yeah.
Matthew 1:5, and from
Matthew.
Matthew 1:5, and I'm trying to figure out how that would, like, how that connection was made. Matthew 1:5. Beginning of Matthew. Oh, it's probably the genealogy thing, which isn't going to tell me a darn thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there were 4 women in Matthew's genealogy.
So, and Salmon, the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz, the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed, the father of Jesse. Father of Boaz. Okay. Huh. Abraham to Isaac to Jacob to Judah to Perez to Hezron to Aram to Amminadab to Nahshon to Salmon to Boaz through Rahab. Wow. So this is an ancestor of a great times about 20 grandmother of Jesus.
Well, and
Mhm.
according to my Bible here, verses 8 through 11, it actually says that Rahab had a confession of faith, because by the very end of it, she said, she says that the Lord your God is God. And they're kind of using that as a,
Yeah.
kind of a concentric circle that they talk about there.
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering earlier, because there's not this is a different kind of relationship than when, like, what Paul or Jesus did was go around and preach and teach, right? These spies aren't preaching or teaching. They're scouting, right? And so that she would have this kind of conversion, I was wondering if it's through their commentary, or it sort of hints that it might be from the history that they know of, that they don't want to be conquered and killed. And so let's say out of fear or something, but
I guess they'll take whatever it is. One way or the other, they'll take it.
yeah. Because she says, well, your God must be the God because you keep winning these battles, essentially. Destroying these people along the way. Chapter 3. Early in the morning, with Joshua rose and set out from Shittim with all the Israelites, and they came to the Jordan. They camped there before crossing over. At the end of 3 days, the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, when you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God being carried by the Levitical priests, then you shall set out from your place. Follow it so you may know the way you should go, for you have not passed this way before. Yet there shall be a space between you and it, a distance of about 2,000 cubits. Wow. Do not come any nearer to it. Then Joshua said to the people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. To the priest, Joshua said, take up the ark of the covenant and pass it in front of the people. So they took up the ark of the covenant and went in front of the people. How long is 2,000 cubits?
Yeah.
About 1,000 yards, my Bible says.
1,000 meters, yeah, 3,000 feet. That's a long way, because the ark is dangerously holy. I mean, 1,000 yards, it'd be hard to see it. 10 football fields, I don't know that I could.
Yeah.
That's 3/4 of a mile. Like, is that the ark there? That thing way?
Without your binocular.
Yeah. The Lord said to Joshua, this day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, so they may know that I will be with you as I was with Moses. You are the one who shall command the priests who bear the ark of the covenant. When you come to the edge of the waters of the Jordan, you will stand still in the Jordan. Joshua then said to the Israelites, draw near and hear the words of the Lord your God. Joshua said, by this you shall know that among you is a living God who without fail will drive out from before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. The ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is going to pass before you into the Jordan. So now select 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. When the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth, rest in the waters of the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan flowing from above shall be cut off. They shall stand in a single heap. When the people set out from their tents to cross over the Jordan, the priests bearing the ark of the covenant were in front of the people, and the Jordan overflows all its banks throughout the time of harvest. So when those who bore the ark had come to the Jordan, the feet of the priests bearing the ark were dipped in the edge of the water. The waters flowing from above stood still, rising up in a single heap far off at Adam, the city that is besides Zarethan, while those flowing toward the sea of the Arabah, the Dead Sea, were wholly cut off. Then the people crossed over opposite Jericho. When all Israel were crossing over on dry ground, the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan until the entire nation finished crossing over the Jordan. Now, this is a little bit different from the Red Sea in that the Jordan's apparently back then and now is not that deep and crossable, but there's a little reflection here of the parting of the Red Sea, right? It's basically the same similar story.
Mm-hmm.
You go across on dry land.
And it said all of the nation of Israel, so that would have been how many hundred people?
Lot.
Several hundred?
Well,
And their flocks as well?
yeah. I'm wondering what the numbers of the people are at this point. quite a few. It's kind of a side note, a political, biblical political note, that you know that those people, that list of people, Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, there's no evidence that they were all like there was a lot of intermingling of cultures. I guess it wasn't that you guys have to leave or we'll kill you. There were fights, but there's still part of the reason that they're still fighting today is the Palestinians were the Canaanites. You know, they're still there, and they're still fighting over the land. So it's interesting that the history kind of continues. I kind of wonder if the parting of the Jordan is symbolic of the power of God guiding the people, or if it's because it looks like this story from the Red Sea, but actually it's very different, because remember in the Red Sea in Exodus, there's an army chasing them.
Mhm.
And the army gets swallowed up by the sea and so on and so forth, right? There's no army chasing them. It's not a matter of their safety, right? To get away. And they can't swim across the Red Sea rather. Here you can walk. So I'm just curious. I'm curious why, what was God up to? Is this supposed to be a reminder that God is with them, guiding them through so their feet don't get wet?
It's kind of interesting on my Bible. It says, it's talking about the blocking off the water.
Yeah.
And it said here that, let me see if I can find it again. The print is really small. As recently as 1927, a blockage of the water in this area was recorded that lasted over 20 hours.
Wow.
But it says, but if so, the miraculous element is not diminished.
Yeah.
But hey,
Right.
you know, it could have naturally happened from a landslide.
And pretty far north of where they were too. So you know, it says at the water would have flowed downstream, was cut off because it's still 16 miles upstream at Adam. So yeah, it's just interesting. Like, not that God needs a reason, like an explanation. I'm not going to say, well, God, why? But with the Red Sea, there was kind of a logical reason why it had to be parted, right? And I'm wondering, it doesn't really say, was the reason to show God's guidance for them? It wasn't for their protection like it was with the Red Sea.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
Because they could have just waded over it, right?
Yeah.
Could have just waded through it.
Yeah, it's not that deep a river where they could not have waded across the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just interesting to me. And the power of the ark, right? The Ark of the Covenant is itself powerful, right? Because they're holding the Ark of the Covenant in the middle of the river while people pass across on dry ground. Although I don't know how do you cross with not within 1,000 meters, 1,000 yards of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot like, and then it's in the temple. They're well within 1,000 yards of what's in the temple, but then it's in the inner room. I don't know. All the rules about the ark I don't understand. When the entire nation had finished crossing over the Jordan, the Lord select 12 men from the people, one from each tribe, and command them, take 12 stones from here out of the middle of the Jordan, from the place where the priest's feet stood, carry them over with you, and lay them down in the place where you camp tonight. And Joshua summoned the 12 men from the Israelites, whom he had appointed, one from each tribe. Joshua said to them, pass on before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan, and each of you take up a stone on his shoulder, one for each of the tribes of the Israelites, so this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off in front of the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When they crossed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the Israelites a memorial forever. The Israelites did as Joshua commanded. They took up 12 stones out of the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord told Joshua. Carried them over with them to the place where they camped and laid them down there. Joshua set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priest bearing the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. To this day, I'm curious. That's an interesting, it sounds like it might be an added thing. Anyway, the priests who bore the ark remained standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything was finished. The Lord commanded Joshua to tell the people, according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua. The people crossed over in haste. As soon as all the people had finished crossing over, the ark of the Lord and the priest crossed over in front of the people. The Reubenites and Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh crossed over armed before the Israelites, as Moses had ordered them. About 40,000 armed for war crossed over before the Lord to the plains of Jericho for battle. On that day, the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him, as they had stood in awe of Moses all the days of his life. The Lord said to Joshua, command the priests to bear the ark of the covenant to come up out of the Jordan. Joshua therefore commanded the priests to come up out of the Jordan. When the priest bearing the ark of the covenant of the Lord came up from the middle of the Jordan, and the soles of the priest's feet touched dry ground, the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and overflowed all its banks as before. The people came up out of the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they camped in Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. Those 12 stones which they had taken out of the Jordan, Joshua set up in Gilgal, saying to the Israelites, when your children ask their parents in time to come, what do these stones mean? Then shall let your children know Israel crossed over the Jordan here on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you crossed over, as the Lord God did to the Red Sea. He dried up for us until we crossed over, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, and so you may fear the Lord your God forever. So there's the answer to my question. At the end there, all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty. That's why the Jordan was dried up.
Mhm.
I wonder where those stones are.
Me too. That's what I was thinking. At first, it sounded like they were still in the bottom of the Jordan, but then they said he picked them up and set them out by Jericho. So maybe when the walls came down, the stones got all mixed up in it.
They could be in a church somewhere. Who knows? In a synagogue or something somewhere. Interesting to think.
Huh. It is because, they're always digging strange things up to hunt, like Josh Gates and his expedition. Maybe we should send him a deal saying, hey, why did you find those 12 stones?
Yeah. Well, I think we can do chapter 5. We're cruising. These are fairly short chapters. Yeah. The new generation circumcised. When all the kings of the Amorites beyond the Jordan to the west, and all the kings of the Canaanites by the sea heard that the Lord had dried up the waters of the Jordan for the Israelites until they had crossed over, their hearts melted, and there was no longer any spirit in them because of the Israelites. At that time, the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites a second time. How do you get circumcised a second time?
Well, maybe it was a second generation. Maybe they hadn't been circumcising them.
Yeah. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the Israelites at Gibeath Haaraloth. This is the reason why Joshua circumcised them. All the males of the people who came out of Egypt, all the warriors, had died during the journey during the wilderness after they come out of Egypt. Although all the people who had come out had been circumcised, yet all the people born on the journey, there you go, through the wilderness after they had come out of Egypt had not been circumcised. I thought they were doing it along the way, but I guess not. For the Israelites traveled 40 years in the wilderness until all the nation, the warriors who came out of Egypt, perished, not having listened to the voice of the Lord. To them, the Lord swore that he would not let them see the land that he had sworn to their ancestors to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So it was their children whom he raised up in their place that Joshua circumcised. But they were uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way. When the circumcising of all the nation was done, they remained in their places in the camp until they were healed from the circumcision.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away from you the disgrace of Egypt. And so that place is called Gilgal to this day.
That's a pretty concise answer to the questions
Yes.
of who did they circumcise? Yeah.
But what's puzzling to me is, isn't the law in the Torah about circumcision, wasn't that they're supposed to do it on a certain day after they were born?
Right, right.
8th day, I think.
Yep. So that means they even though they knew that, they didn't do it.
Well, they're traveling in the desert.
Yeah, yeah. Sometime in the 40 years, you'd think they would have had time, but
Yeah.
maybe not. And Gilgal, called Gilgal to that day, it is related to the verb galal, to roll. Anyway, while the Israelites were camped in Gilgal, they kept the Passover in the evening on the 14th day of the month in the plains of Jericho. On the day after the Passover, on that very day, they ate the produce of the land, unleavened cakes and parched grain. The manna ceased on the day they ate the produce of the land, and the Israelites no longer had manna. They ate the crops of the land of Canaan that year. It's funny, they had the manna in the wilderness for 40 years, and the day that they cross the Jordan, they don't have it anymore. Once when Joshua was by Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing before him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went to him and said to him, are you one of us or one of our adversaries? He replied, neither. But as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped. And he said to him, what do you command your servant, my Lord? The commander of the army of the Lord said to Joshua, remove the sandals from your feet, for the place where you stand is holy. And Joshua did so.
Okay, that would have been the Archangel Michael. It doesn't say so in my Bible, but I was always told that Michael was the commander of God's armies.
I find it interesting that there's no name. The fact that it actually says
Mhm,
name three times, the commander of the army of the Lord.
mhm.
And there's no hint that it's an angel, but it's also a vision. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it's interesting.
Yeah. Of course, there's only 3 of them. Well, 2 of them for sure by name, and the third one, I think by inference, that would be that are named in the Bible. Raphael would be the third one by inference, but Michael was always commander of God's armies.
And
And
Gabriel,
of course, Gabriel was the messenger from God.
yeah,
But then in Roman Catholic tradition, there are 4 more, one for every day of the week.
of course. We will stop there.
Okay.
Now we're going to start going into the. I will tell you one of the things about the history book. It's not just about. There's a lot of war. There will be the conquering of the Canaanites and stuff, but they even fight amongst each other quite a bit. So every book's got some kind of battle in it, pretty much, or multiple battles in it, pretty much. So
Yeah. People haven't changed much over the years, have we?
no, we haven't. So we will end there. Let's pray.
Mhm.
Gerald, thank you for giving us the story of your people, of our people, the story of all the stories of your love for them, your protection for them, your guiding hand, guiding them and us throughout all our lives. All this in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So you're not going to be here next week, right?
Next week, I am taking a couple days of vacation.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Okay.
especially after last week, which was a long week. So,
Yes.
yeah, I'm taking a couple days of vacation, and I'll be here on Friday, but I think I'm not back until Thursday evening. So,
Yeah.
so yep, and we will continue with Joshua 6.
All right.
Okay.
So
Um,
have a really.
The Sunday service was